Back in session. So we're going to have a general discussion. This is a working session that will not have public comment. What I'll do is I'll ask the staff to give us some background on SB 236, what it is, what it's about. I'd also like some elucidation on the genesis of map 1 through map whatever we're on now. What map are we on? 5? 6? Okay, yeah. So I'd like to understand how we got from map 1 to map 6, and then we'll have some discussion. All right, so Eric or Tony, if you want to get started.
In the most recent session of the General Assembly, the General Assembly passed what is known as Senate Bill 236, and also passed a House companion, which I believe is House Bill 445, if my memory serves me right. And the governor signed into law, contents of which require the county by December 30, all counties in the state, including Cecil County, I should say, not just Cecil County, by December 31st of this year to adopt a tier map. It's permissible, it's not mandatory. However, if the county does not choose to adopt a tier map starting on January 1st of 2013, then the only subdivisions that would be permitted to be approved would be those subdivisions on public sewer within what are known as Tier 1 growth areas, which, if you look at the map to your left and the map on the screen, are those areas that are shown in red. So the legislation lays out what the tiers are. I believe each of you gentlemen have received a fact sheet in addition to draft map 4 that gives you a analysis of what the Senate Bill 236 contains. It contains a description of the tiers, tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4. It provides you with the restrictions that are contained within the 4 tiers. It talks about the grandfathering provisions that are contained within the legislation, and it lays out the process that we have to follow. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, Mr. Chairman, during the presentation process. We can go through each of the tiers if you would like, just so the Planning Commission is on the same page.
Why don't we do that?
Okay. Tier 1 are those areas that are served by public sewage systems and mapped as locally designated growth areas. Tier 2 are those areas that are planned to be served by public sewage systems in locally designated growth areas needed to satisfy demand for development at densities consistent with the long-term development policy after consideration of the capacity of land available for development, including infill and redevelopment within the local jurisdiction. Tier 3, those are areas that are not planned for sewage service and are not dominated by agricultural or forest land and are not planned or zoned for land, agricultural, or resource protection, preservation, or conservation. Tier 3s also include rural villages, locally designated growth areas, and areas planned for large lot development. Tier 4 areas are areas that are not planned for sewage service, that are planned or zoned for land, agricultural, or resource protection, preservation, or conservation, as well as areas dominated by agricultural lands, forest lands, natural areas or rural legacy, priority preservation areas, or areas subject to covenants, restrictions, conditions, or conservation easements for the benefit of or held by a state agency. Now, as far as the restrictions go, in Tier 1, the county may approve a minor or major subdivision only if all lots will be served by public sewer. In Tier 2, the county may only grant approval if all lots will be served by public sewer or if a minor subdivision is served by on-site sewage disposal systems. In Tier 3, the county may approve a major subdivision served by on-site sewage disposal systems, community systems, or a shared facility only if the Planning Commission recommends its approval and conducts a review that includes the cost of providing local government services to the residential subdivision and the potential environmental issues or natural resource inventory related to the proposed residential major subdivision. Tier 4, the county may only approve minor subdivisions served by individual on-site sewage disposal systems. Major subdivisions may be approved if the state determines that the zoning density in the Tier 4 areas result in an overall yield of not more than 1 unit per 20 acres as verified by the state. Now, one thing to keep in mind that the legislation presently states is that in tiers 2 through 4, if you choose to do a minor subdivision, then that will preclude major subdivision. However, Tony has sought clarification from that from the State Department of Planning as to whether that will actually be the case. Verbally, he has been told that their Attorney General says that that is not an accurate reading of the law. We have requested something in writing so that we can give accurate advice to individuals coming in and requesting our guidance on this document. We have not yet received that. We have been promised that it is forthcoming.
So let me understand what you just said. For which tier was that?
Tiers 2 through 4, the way the legislation was approved and signed by the governor says that if you do a minor subdivision, you would not be able to further subdivide that property, which means you would not be able to do a major subdivision. However, as I said, staff at Maryland Department of Planning has said that after consultation with their Assistant Attorney General does not read the legislation that way. But we have requested it in writing so that in case they decide that it is accurate, and we've been telling people one way or the other, we need to know so we can advise people as to how they need to
So
proceed.
your current interpretation of the words as
Right now,
say
it's
a minor sub would
Right.
basically eliminate the right
Do
of
it
the
right.
landowner to do a major subdivision.
Right.
I have a question.
Sorry. Let me just make a point on Tier 4, Pat, and then we can, now in Tier 4, as I just read to you, the state says that if they do an analysis and the density is 1 to 20 greater, then the potential existence could do a major subdivision. However, as part of that calculation, they will not include in the overall acreage those areas that are owned by federal, state, county, or municipal governments, areas that have previously been preserved through any of the various easement programs, and they will leave in those properties that have previously been subdivided. So it will be a difficult.
And that's a holistic statement about a whole tier.
Correct.
So just so everybody understands, because I took a minute, now let me ask my question before we're done. If a tier has 10,000 acres, say, that is designated to be able to be used in the calculation, of which some of that may not, based on what you just said, and the density would be 1 in 20 in tier 4, right?
Correct.
So that would yield so many homes, 500. And if the first 5,000 acres had 500 homes, the second 5,000 acres would not be able to have any new development. Is that right?
What has been previously subdivided would be included in the calculation. What has been preserved would not be. So, if that's what you're asking, yes, it would make it difficult to achieve one more
Right.
thing.
So I'm a landowner in a tier 4 in this scenario, and tier 4 has been built out to 1 in 20 at 500 homes, but there's still land left for development, and I own it. I could not develop that land. Is that right?
Beyond a minor subdivision, that's correct.
Correct. Okay. I just want to understand. That's the
I'm
case.
sorry, Pat had a question. I didn't mean
And then Diane will then go.
I have a couple of them there. First of all, the definition of tiers 1 through 4, and then the restrictions for tiers 1 through 4 are state, because Cecil County doesn't have any tiers.
That's correct. The tiers are a result of the legislation that was passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor
Okay,
They are effective as of July 1st of this year.
you began by telling us that we don't have to do this. However, you followed that with immediate threat that if we don't, here's what they're gonna do to us.
Correct.
That's pretty much it, right?
Yes, the way the legislation reads, it says that if the tiers are not adopted by the county by December 31st of this year, then only minor subdivisions with on-site sewage disposal or major or minor subdivisions served by public sewer in a tier 1 can be approved by the county.
All right, I'd like to ask Bill to make some.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One, Senate Bill 236. How does that either agree with or is it in conflict with our comprehensive plan?
That's the question.
The way the Senate bill reads is that by the next time the county has to do its 6-year review, the county must adopt the tier map into our comprehensive plan. So for us, the 6-year review would take place in 2016, and by that time it would become a part of the county's comprehensive plan. As far as how the tiers would or would not conflict with what we're trying to achieve with our plan, right now, if you look at the maps, the latest version is draft map 4, which Tony has placed on the easel in front of the closet doors, storage room doors, and Steve has up on the screen right now. The tiers 1 and 2 are those areas right now that are coterminous with our designated growth area. Tiers 3 and 4 are those areas that are predominantly consistent with what is our rural conservation district and our resource protection district. So the tiers are trying to, as best they can, align themselves with what the comprehensive plan is trying to achieve in a large scale type of approach. It's probably the best way I can say it right now.
So, Bill, I think to be clear, if we do nothing, the comprehensive plan that we just approved would get superseded by whatever the state decides tier 1 through 4 is.
If nothing is done, if you look at that draft map 4 that's on the projected on the screens and as well as on the easel, those areas shown in red would be the only areas that an individual would be able to do a major subdivision in. The entirety of the county, whether it's shown in the hatched area, the yellow area, or the green area, would only be able to do a minor subdivision.
Right, so just so we're clear, we just did a comprehensive plan review, which we're required to do every 6 years. Second one I sat through. It was a 2-year effort with dozens and dozens and dozens of citizens, lots of public hearing. All that would be superseded by this now, by December 31st, if we do nothing.
Whatever is ultimately decided on by the Board of County Commissioners, because the way the legislation reads is the decision to adopt is the local legislative authority's decision, which in our case is the Board of County Commissioners. If they adopt a tier map, that map is sent to the state, and it's the county's tier map. The state does not have any approval or denial authority over that map. All they are required to do is to review that map and make comment on it. Comments are non-binding. However, the legislation states that if comments are received, then a hearing has to be held on those comments, a public hearing, and they have to be presented.
So I'm glad this is on, so another matter of process, right?
Yes.
This absolutely affects planning and zoning, this issue.
Yes.
And this is the first time this commission's hearing this topic, so if it wasn't for today, we wouldn't have any input into this other than as normal course of being a citizen, right? So it's on today's topic, but these maps have been developed without due process, in my opinion, from a planning commission standpoint. Why changing to essentially zoning doesn't come through a planning and zoning mechanism, but that's a whole other topic. So here we are. Before we go much further, go Bill, and then Diane wants to talk.
The other question I had was, I made the assumption, and you can enlighten me if I'm right or wrong here, that part of this Senate Bill 236 is derived out of this Plan Maryland. Is that a fair assumption?
It's independent of that. We are still required to do our Plan Maryland maps with the different print areas, as they're called, growth print, ag print, green print, the subcategories of those. They're also required to be sent to the state by December 31st of this year. So staff will be, again, creating a map based on Plan Maryland's print areas as a starting point in the process, and we'll probably be presenting something probably in the early part of September, I'm going to say, have something ready.
Okay, so.
But, yeah, I mean, in actuality, the two are acting in concert with each other. They're trying
Or
to-
in conflict with each other.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can look at it that way. I mean, it's the way the state looks at it and the way their guidance documents talk is that when this effort is the first effort they would like to see done, and then the Plan Maryland print areas are supposed to be reconciled with the ultimate tiers that are adopted by the counties. So certain print areas will fall into certain tiers as best they can based on their definitions, and certain print areas will not fall into certain tiers based, again, on definitions. And that's
So,
what the
is
staff
that-
will have to do to try and reconcile that, to get a plan map.
I guess my conflict is that if you read Plan Maryland, it specifically states that it's not a substitute for local comprehensive plans, nor will it take away planning and zoning authority. That's written right in here. I have the plan here. There's also a state legal advice statement in the executive summary here, which is dated December of 2011, which specifically states that MDP, or Maryland Department of Planning, has no authority over local jurisdictions, land use, and decisions. I mean, that's written right in here, which is on the website. So I guess my conflict is now, they say one thing, and then they come out with another. Is it stab me in the back or stab me in the chest? I don't understand.
And one of the, one of the arguments that the county government made during both Plan Maryland discussions and Senate Bill 236 discussions was that local government, not only Cecil County, but other local governments throughout the state, felt that both efforts were a egregious usurpation of local planning and zoning prerogatives that have been delegated to us, in our case, by Article 66B of the Annotated Code of Maryland, and that even though they were saying the things that you just quoted, their actions were different than their words, and their actions were actually a significant intrusion into what the locals have enjoyed for years as our powers and our responsibilities to determine our own fate as we grow and as we manage our growth into the future.
Thank you.
You got some questions?
I just have a point of clarification with the tabulation of the 120. Is that tier 4 altogether, or is it NAR and SAR individual?
The meeting we had was last week, I believe it was, with the staff from MDP. Their comment to that question was that they look at the tier 4 in its entirety.
Eric, everyone has discussed map 4, and there is a map 6 over there. I have in my hand a map 5, which you guys are also familiar with, and it's far less invasive. It takes far less away from property owners in terms of their rights. Yeah, that may be 5. I don't see it. Does it say it on it?
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
on the screen.
It is, that's 5? Okay. I would think if we were being forced to do something, we would do something that is the least, that takes away property owners' rights as little as possible, et cetera, et cetera.
That's something you guys will have to decide ultimately in your recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. Right, as there are different iterations of the map have been requested by different individuals. The map that the board has chosen to move forward with as far as public hearings in September is draft map 4. That's the one that Tony again has on the easel in front of the storage room doors, and that Steve had on the screen earlier. There, as you can see by the lower box in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, there have been different iterations of that map, starting out in May and moving through to August. However, the Board of County Commissioners, as I said, has chosen to move forward with draft map 4. So that's the one that will be presented during the public hearing on September 4th. And at that point, public comment can be taken as to its merits and demerits and any changes that individuals would like to see to that map.
Hold on. Yeah, please do. Stop.
Well, I thought it was that there was a lot, as Bill pointed out, Chairman, there was a lot of effort put into the comprehensive plan and the resulting regulations that came out of that. It was 40 people spent a hell of a long time working on that, and certain things came out of that. I look at that as if you're going to have a specific regulation, we have to go by which we should follow, zoning regulation. We should follow that as our Bible, I guess, or overall direction. So I think we should be more consistent with following our comprehensive plan that we develop, and try to adhere as much as we can to what the state wants, but to stick to our comprehensive plan as the overriding rule.
Right.
That's my general comment.
Just for the record, I'll repeat it. A lot of people, twice that I've been involved with in the last 6 years, have reviewed the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, as written, is a wonderful document that is unable to be acted on because of the lack of infrastructure, particularly water and sewage, okay? So we cannot even achieve the densities in the comprehensive plan. If all that work gets superseded by this, then why do we do it, number one? Number two, because we don't have infrastructure at this time, which is a multi-decade issue, we can't even do the comprehensive plan as written, let alone have it superseded by something more restrictive that says the only place you can do development is where you already have infrastructure, of which we don't even have, to even meet the needs of the current comprehensive plan. So certainly this is just a back-ended way of downzoning and elimination of people's private property rights. So just so you know where I'm coming from. So the maps themselves, how aligned with S1, S2, and S3 are they, right? So we have other mechanisms to say where we currently have infrastructure, where we're planning to have infrastructure in the next 3 years, where we're planning to have infrastructure in the next, whatever S3 is, 5 to 8. How aligned are the maps, the map 4, which the commissioners want to go forward with S1, S2, S3? Even that, I think, has gotten trumped by map 4. Is that right?
The areas shown in red and the areas shown in the hatched on draft map 4 are those areas that are either, the red areas are those that show up presently as existing sewer service areas, and the hatched areas are the areas that show up as either a class 2 category, which is 0 to 5 years, or a class 3 category, which is 6 to 10 years. And they're all found within our growth area. Right.
I'd like to add that I agree with Wyatt and Bill. I also served on the comprehensive plan. I'm looking at the county land use map that's in that plan and matching that up to this map. And I think insofar as the map agrees with the comprehensive plan for it, those 41 people were appointed by the elected commissioners at the time. They spent about, I think we spent 2 years on that thing.
2 years.
The planning commission reviewed it, the Board of County Commissioners approved it, so it's the result of a long, democratic, inclusive process that, to me, expresses the will of the citizens of this county. I don't agree with every page in this plan, but I don't think anybody does, but I think it is an expression of the will of the people as best as you can do it. And so in that regard, whatever map we come up with, I think ought to be based on the comprehensive plan.
The sentiments that are being expressed by the Planning Commission in regard to the county's comprehensive plan were those many of the same arguments were made to the state when they were in the process of evaluating Plan Maryland and in the process of Senate Bill 236. However, the state chose to ignore those comments and move on ahead anyway with what they were doing because the governor's quotations in some of the publications, local decisions were stupid decisions. The state didn't want to subsidize those anymore.
Because the state and federal government never make stupid decisions.
Right, I had a question.
Diane has, hold on, let Diane go
How
first.
crazy would it be for us to include more of the hatched area?
Diane.
For us to include more of the hatched area into the red area? I understand their definition is where existing sewage already is, but the hatched area has to be approved by the state for us to get included in the master water sewer plan. And isn't that a big concern of us, that of ours, that we would be able to grow when we want to? And the agenda of Plan Maryland is possibly to stop growth in rural counties.
So you're saying converting the red areas to hatched areas, or?
Hatched areas to red areas.
Oh, okay. I'm
Going
sorry, I'm
against
sorry.
their
Right.
definition of what a red area is supposed to be.
Yeah, ultimately, as I said, the Board of County Commissioners will be approving a version of this map, whether it's draft map 4 or draft map 4 with tweaks, whatever that, we'll find out on September 18th. But right now, whatever you adopt goes to the state. They can't change it at that point. They can comment on it. So,
We're at the mercy of the General Assembly.
well, that was a veiled threat that was made at that meeting, I believe, last week, as well as some other state officials have said that the shenanigans are played by local governments, or they don't feel that there's good faith effort to comply, that they could always revisit this effort with the General Assembly and try to
Of which we have no representation in Cecil County. So, at least a direct delegate for the county. Question, Diana, the issue around the red areas is existing infrastructure.
Correct.
I'm concerned around tier 4, how much tier 4 ground we allow, because it's basically saying that that's almost off the table, right? And then the real battleground will be over tier 2 and 3 in the future. So if you want to comment.
Well, something you need to think about is we have to go to the state to get approval on those tier 2 areas.
Yeah.
And with Commissioner Minor's question about whether Plan Maryland and SB 236 are in concert or conflict with one another, I think it's in confusion with one another. Right now, we're working on creating 4 tiers and 13 different classifications for Plan Maryland. So that's 17 in all. And where Plan Maryland will intersect with Senate Bill 236 is in the conversion of the hatched area, or gray area, the tier 3 area, or the tier 2 area, excuse me, to the tier 1, because that would require an amendment of the master water and sewer plan by the county, and MDE has the authority, in fact, is charged with, under Plan Maryland, where all the state's actions are more coordinated in the future than they have been in the past. And we know the state's thinking is the map 6 over there, which has more green in it, and specifically the map 4 that was adopted by the Board of Commissioners has 54% of the land area of the county in tier 4. The state's view, and what David did on the GIS, he accessed the MDP website and just took the tier 4 and then overlaid that on our draft map 4. So in other words, what wasn't tier 4
just came up as what we already had, but that has 75% of the county as tier 4.
And this would be, if we did nothing, that's what the state would say?
I don't know that I would agree with that 100%, but
That's your
in
opinion?
that direction.
Correct.
In that direction. And so the thing to remember is that this draft map 4 that was adopted by the Board of County Commissioners after considerable debate may or may not be the ultimate map that we send in. And I think it's also important to note that in legislation, the Tier 4 originally had a 1 to 25 yield test. And there was a compromise. And the compromise was it would go down to 1 to 20. But the Secretary of Planning would make I believe it was in February of 2013, make a report to the progress report. We're here to report progress or lack thereof from the state's perspective on the implementation of these tiers and the adoption of maps. And at that point, I am very sure that the state and the Secretary of Planning would ask for the General Assembly for powers to basically impose tiers for those counties that have not adopted tiers. And Eric is absolutely correct. It is technically voluntary, just as they're not trying to take over local planning. But I think that is what we're going to see. But I think the real bottom line is that somebody who has land in the SAR and the zoning ordinance says that its density is 1 to 20. Well, that same person, that same land, if they're really lucky with the calculation, the yield calculation, if it turns out to be for all of Tier 4, 1 to 20, well, they can still do subdivision. But for the person who has NAR zoned land and the county's zoning ordinance, consistent with the county's comprehensive plan, says 1 to 10.
They just lost 1 to 10.
If they're real lucky, the yield's going to be 1 to 20. But there is no guarantee. That's the view. That's the state's view of Cecil County. 75% Tier 4. There's no guarantee that parts of the growth area don't become Tier 4. So
Because they don't have infrastructure.
if somebody has land that they can now, by right, develop at 1 to 1, if they're lucky,
They'll go
they can
1
do
to
1 to
20.
20.
So let me, again, just so we're clear,
So we don't know the extent to which, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. We don't know the extent to which, or the degree to which, what we ultimately end up with, by whatever means, will be consistent with and I'm agreeing with you that we had a comprehensive plan effort, which it was over 2.5 years, 41 members, over 100 public meetings.
all superseded by this.
Yeah.
Now, the question, let's just play this out, and you do the 75%, right? So how many acres in the county? 100,000 or so?
228.
228, okay, so roughly 150,000 of those, 160,000 of those 228 would be a Tier 4 at 1 to 20. You do the math, I'm guessing we're probably built out or close to it, because this becomes not parcel by parcel, but it becomes a total divide out. Let's just say the number's 160,000 divided by 20, that's how many residences you can have. And if they already are built out to that number, whoever's left with undeveloped land loses completely. I mean, that's just, to me, I don't even know how constitutional all this is, I suppose, but, you know what I mean?
First of all, you said a minute ago that the commissioners have already selected map 4.
No decision will be made on what map to be sent down to the state until the meeting of September 18th. They have reached a consensus right now that draft map 4 is the one they want to move through to the public hearing and take public comment on at this point. But the final decision will be made on at their meeting of September 18th.
So if this group decided that the map 5, let me just pick that, was fairer or more representative of the comprehensive plan, or whichever, that is relevant. At this point, they've already made that decision.
No, they are having a public hearing on September 4th. Whatever recommendations you gentlemen have will be forwarded to them as part of that meeting, so they're aware of what your concerns may be with draft map 4. Anybody from the public who has concerns with draft map 4, ideas for improvement, revision, whatever it may be, have an opportunity to appear that evening as well, to present their testimony. I'm sure we'll receive written testimony in email and regular mail form prior to then. That will all be presented to the board for their consideration and evaluation as well.
So but they are going to make some recommendation. I mean, they're going to do what the state has asked in terms of 4 tiers and a map and whatever.
Yes, I anticipate that will be done because the alternative is be a serious detrimental effect on the landowners in the county and basically eviscerate our comprehensive plan.
Eviscerate the word. Bill, you had some questions?
Going back to the, if you do nothing and dig your heels in and say, we have a comprehensive plan, this is what we're sticking to, that means that at the end of the year, you can't do a major subdivision, is that correct?
That means any area outside of that red on that map, you couldn't do any major
My
stuff.
next question is, should that road be followed,
No.
say in February? Could you then submit your map
No.
and be covered?
No, we have to have a map in,
By December 30th.
the law says by December 31st. The state is saying they'd like to have it by October 1st, so they have time to review it and comment on it prior to December 31st. But if we do nothing by December 31st, and the commissioners choose to wait till February, March, April, whatever it may be of 2013, then at that point, we have forfeited our opportunity to submit a tier map.
So the thing that concerns me the most about this is an environmental bill, right? With the logic that if you minimize non-sewage related development, you help the environment, but this is essentially a dam zoning bill.
My suspicions are that this is between this and Plan Maryland, speaking for myself only, not for county government or the commissioners.
Correct.
I think this could be most properly characterized as the Baltimore City Redevelopment Act. And they're using everything else as window dressing to justify it.
I think it's even worse than that. I think it's telling people where they're gonna live and how they're gonna live, and restrict everybody to a small area.
Yep.
And take, and use that, right, and use that excess money to revamp, say, Baltimore or other large municipalities. But they're telling us where we can't go.
Well, my comment is, those things are all true, but we've got to resolve this the best we can. I think to do nothing is insane. To dig our heels in and say we're going to make it exactly the way we want it, maybe just as bad. I think we need to, again, look at the comprehensive plan as our guide, maybe make some modifications that we think are the right thing to do based on land use, not on any map, but on land use, for example, consistent with the comprehensive plan. Those areas in the middle of the counties across the county 40, those areas should be maybe expanded near the interchanges where we want development, and we will eventually hopefully have infrastructure. I think around the towns where they are red and go directly to green, whether the towns want it or not, it's outside of the it's county property. There should be a graduated area of growth, possibly not that particularly large, but there should be some expansion with gray, yellow to green to allow for almost more cluster development around the towns, which is again inconsistent in least in theory with the comprehensive plan, and that would also provide people that would build there would help maintain those water and sewer systems in those towns. So, you know, and then other areas that we need to follow the comprehensive plan and with the rural legacy, the prior preservation areas should be maintained as much as possible. So we make a good effort to follow the comprehensive plan, make some things we think are right, like development along the road cars around the towns, whether they're on the map or not. That's what we can do. Make our best effort, and then if they want to, you know, screw us, then that's what they have. They have an option, but we shouldn't cater to them. We shouldn't ignore them. We shouldn't necessarily either just panic and do something off the cuff. We should follow the comprehensive plan as best we can with consideration to all the areas, preservation areas, and make the best map we can and submit that.
So why we would voluntarily provide anything more restrictive than the comprehensive plan is currently written is a mystery to me. So my recommendation, we can vote or make a recommendation, would be follow the comprehensive plan to the letter of the law within the framework they're trying to provide. And make them tell us that we're wrong, and we'll fight that.
I agree.
And if we want, for the county, this may crystallize somebody finally, because the fact is, we can't even do the comprehensive plan, but I want the right and preserve the right to do the comprehensive plan. We cannot do it today because we don't have the infrastructure, because we haven't had the political will, nor the voting base that demands it, okay? So it inhibits job creation, because you can't nobody wants to come and hook up the wells and septic. And you can't get densities that you want. And the fact is, if you can't get densities where you want them, they're gonna happen somewhere else. And that's just it's the way it is. People gotta live somewhere, okay? And I don't personally think everybody wants to live in Baltimore. And so the fact is, we should do the minimum required, is my recommendation, that is absolutely lockstep with the comprehensive plan, and make them tell us we're wrong. Why would we, and the fact is, we can't even do the comprehensive plan because we don't have infrastructure. So, Cheryl, write that down. Seriously. And at least preserve the right to do what we've tried to be doing for decades. Why would we give up that right? It's a mystery to me. Why would we take development rights away from farmers that will affect their property value and everything else? It's a mystery to me. So this is down zoning and sheep's clothing.
It's not even in sheep's clothing.
Really nasty.
I agree with everything you just said. I think that's brilliant. I think we'll take that position as a planning commission.
My only caveat though is that the comprehensive plan also includes things like the prior preservation in ag areas and maps that were approved. And some of those are inconsistent with what the state wants to do as well. So we have to incorporate all those things.
Of course. I mean, we don't want Kirkwood Highway everywhere. We want rural legacy. We want proper land use. We want large chunks of the county used as it's historically been used, and that is in rural environments. Rural doesn't always mean farms, although it can mean farms. And protect what we have, but not have everything superimposed upon us for other motives and other reasons. I mean, I don't want Philadelphia to be Cecil County. Certainly don't want Baltimore to be Cecil County, but I just don't get it. Just don't. So why we would do anything other than what the comprehensive plan says, and then create the political will to really do the comprehensive plan, which means we need infrastructure where we want it, and we still don't have it. And as a result, you can't put densities where you want, you can't create jobs because nobody